of closing things down, and some of the higher paying jobs, or pretty decent jobs in New York City, that are being lost. A lot of the funds that are being lost. Now the closures, they resulted in around $9.8 billion in lost construction activity and 74,000 direct and indirect lost jobs in New York City. There was a report that came out from Building Trades Employers Association, and they said the decline in jobs, it contributed to a $5.5 billion loss in total wages. Now, it also said that a decade of employment growth was wiped out in just 2 months last year. And they cited the New York City Independent Budget Office, and they said that it will take at least 5 years to be able to recover from the economic problems they've suffered so far. Now, the problem with all of these people moving out, the problem with all of the job losses, is it adds up. And also, every $1 that's spent on construction typically yields $1.31 spent in the city. For every 1 million spent on construction, it typically creates around 8 jobs in the city. And each job on a construction site results in 1.32 more jobs. Construction and real estate, they comprise 20% of New York City's GDP, and they provide 10% of jobs and 5% of wages. Now here's another shocker. Not really, but we know that they've been developing these technologies to replace workers at a rapid pace. McDonald's especially has been out at the front of all of this, and now 10 McDonald's restaurants in Chicago are going to be testing automated drive-through ordering using their new artificial intelligence software that converts voice orders for the computer. Now their CEO, he appeared on Wednesday at AllianceBernstein's Strategic Decisions Conference, and he said that the new voice order technology is about 85% accurate and can take 80% of drive-through orders. The company obtained the technology during their 2019 acquisition of Apparente. Now, in 2019, the company was snapping up a lot of tech back then as well, and it's commonplace to see order kiosks in most McDonald's locations at this point, and the company also embraced Uber Eats for delivery during this crisis. Now, this isn't just staying in 10 restaurants in Chicago. They said that this technology will likely take more than 1 or 2 years to be implemented, but they're going to go from the 10 restaurants in Chicago to 14,000 restaurants across the U.S., and they said with an infinite number of promo permutations, menu permutations, dialect permutations, weather, and on and on and on, unquote. Now, McDonald's did say that they have been looking into automating some of their kitchen work, like their fryers and grills. Also, quote, the level of investment that would require, the cost of investment, we're nowhere near to what the break-even would need to be from the labor cost standpoint to make it a good business decision for franchisees to do. Moving forward, the thought I have is that a lot of the small businesses, the smaller restaurants, the mom and pops, they're not going to be able to afford to implement a lot of these changes. And therefore, the largest companies out there, McDonald's in particular, will not be sharing the burden of the increased labor costs. It'll make it just about unaffordable to go out to eat at most restaurants. A lot of them will fail and go out of business, the ones that have survived this long. Now, something else crazy that's going on would be the huge rush of people that have been escaping some states, they've been landing in other states. So along with these people leaving, another thing that leaves would happen to be their tax income. And I wanted to go over this trend that's been taking place a long time before any of this started. We know there's been a serious escalation in regards to people relocating around the U.S. Now, this data is from 2019, but we find that for Florida, they attracted some $34.4 billion in adjusted gross income from around 558,096 new residents or tax filers and their dependents that moved to Florida for the year. Now, Florida, they lost $15.6 billion in AGI from 431,307 people who left. So Florida came out ahead with around 126,000 extra new people and 17.7 billion in net new taxable income. Now the thing is, these trends have really accelerated. The numbers that will come out for 2020 and 2021 are likely to show a massive surge of people moving to Florida, as well as a ton of people who have left New York. But it's funny, these trends have kind of been identical to how they've been. So there was a total gain of around 2.7% of the state's total 2018 AGI, which was $661 billion. Now Texas, it was number 2. It had a net income gain of around $4 billion, followed by Arizona, that had an income gain of $3.8 billion. North and South Carolina, they were also in the top 5 with net gains of 2.8 and 2.6 billion. Now, for those states that have been losing a lot of their tax base, New York, it had the worst outflow of money of any state in 2019. New York, they lost a net $9 billion in income. That was more than 1.15% of their 2018 AGI, with a net of nearly 153,000 residents who moved out. Now, the preliminary reports are that millions of people have left New York City throughout the past couple years that things have gotten real bad. California, it was also next on the list. They lost a net 8.8 billion from 165,000 people who left. Illinois, they came in third with a loss of around $6 billion and 82,000 people who left. New Jersey and Maryland, they were in the 4th and 5th place. New Jersey lost $3.1 billion on net, and Maryland lost $1.8 billion in taxpayer income as well. Now, this trend of money leaving New York City and never returning, it's actually been going on for quite a while. When you look at the chart that shows the lost income compared to other states, it's been down 19 years in a row. For example, in 2019 alone, New York would have had nearly $103 billion more in AGI to tax had it not been for the years of the migration losses. Now, when the state's AGI losses are accumulated between 2000 and 2019,
drop that pen. Before you sign that, raise your credit scores instantly with Experian.
they've lost $892 billion in cumulative lost income that would have been taxed over that entire period. That's nearly $1 trillion of income that they have lost. Now here's the trick. Florida doesn't tax incomes, but if they did tax incomes at the same rate, they would have gained $1.4 trillion in income that could have been taxed over that entire period. Now, based on a percentage of total income, Illinois actually came in last in the nation. In 2019, Illinois lost 1.41% of their 2018 AGI. Alaska and New York, they came in at second and third with losses of 1.35% and 1.15% of their total incomes. Now, the top 5 who have gained income would be Idaho at number 1, then Florida, Nevada, Arizona, and South Carolina. We're on the precipice of what looks like a major shift, a major power shift around the nation. And there has been a lot of wealthy individuals, a lot of the big banks and corporations that have been all packing up and moving down to Florida ever since we entered this crisis. The reason? They're trying to skip out on the highest tax rates in the world that are currently in places like New York or Los Angeles. Chicago's taxes are also very high. In fact, all of these very high tax states, that's where everybody has been leaving. I believe Pennsylvania also had $1.7 billion in net losses. Connecticut, they lost some $1.7 billion. Ohio, $1.6 billion. Massachusetts, $1.4 billion. And Virginia, $1.2 billion. All this is from people leaving their states and taking their tax money with them. I don't know, when Constantine decided to go out and to pack up the majority of the wealth of the Roman kingdom and move it over to Constantinople, you know what happened? They suddenly had a new capital. I know it's not exactly apples to apples, but I anticipate once these much larger numbers that we've seen from the mass exit from a lot of these northern states begins to hit the charts, it's likely to be very epic. I thank you guys for stopping by.
Now, with all that being said, this is pretty much where it's heading. Giving all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakakwadash. Call hello, Yim, Ba Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakakwadash. Double honor to the head elders, the Apostle Great Millstone. Amos 9 and 13. Behold, the days come, saith Yahweh, that the plowman shall overtake the reaper, and the plowman, right, is the worker, all right, the employee, and to overtake the reaper is the employer, and the worker and the one that owns the business. All right, and the treader of grapes, him that soweth seed, and the mountains shall drop sweet wine. Right, which the mountains is representing these governments, these high governments. All right, and these different, companies that are around the world. All right, they're, pretty much taking their business elsewhere, other than America, and all the hills shall melt, and the hills are smaller governments. All right, because they're feeling the crunch of the outsourcing of the production of everything, and everything is in disarray, man. So there's, Lord willing, not too much more time left. All right.